It is 4:28 in the morning here, and I woke up voluntarily. Why? Because I'm chasing the sunrise. But we do have to be quiet because my wife's still asleep. She wasn't crazy enough to get up with me. Alright, I think I made it where I want to be. The waves are pretty loud, but I only got about 10 minutes, so I'm going to go ahead and set up. Let's hope we can get this. Well, that was a lot of fun. It looked really good. Whew, gonna fall. Looked really good to me. Now it's time to head back and see what we can do with it. So let's go. Hi, Dutch. How you doing, buddy? Well, good morning.
Good morning.
Did that wake you up?
No.
Haha. Mission accomplished. All right. So, made it back home, and now it's time to go into Lightroom. All right, so we made it into Adobe, and before I show you how I export it and edit it, I just wanted to point out a few details about it. Down here you can see that it is a total of 1,200 pictures that I took at an interval of 3 seconds, which should give us approximately a 20-second clip. And for the camera settings, I did leave it in aperture priority, but I put the ISO at 100, shot it at 24 millimeters and an aperture of f4, and then let the shutter speed do its thing as the exposure changes. Also, when I import the time lapse, because of the amount of pictures, I also leave the previews at minimum to try to make sure that it can import as quickly as possible. And since I'm not going to edit each individual image, I'm not really worried about the previews and stuff like that. But anyway, so come over, just pick the first image, come over to develop settings. I shoot my images in the camera flat V2 for the Nikon cameras, and I like to pick Adobe Landscape. It adds some contrast, it adds some color, but it also edits the image in a nice way that prevents or keeps me from having to go through each individual image to make a bunch of changes and potentially start making it look weird and all that nonsense. But then I like to also bump up the vibrance a little bit because I like when it's more colorful. And so that's all I'm gonna do. So then I can come back to the library and hit Control All or Command All on Mac, and then I go to sync settings, and the only thing I sync is obviously what I changed. So the treatment profile being the Adobe Landscape, and then the bump and vibrance that I put on the first image. So then I'll hit synchronize, and you can see up here in the top left, it's synchronizing to all 1200 pictures, and it's done. So with all the images still selected, I come to export. Now I already have this kind of set up for this example, but I like to do the choose folder later. The custom settings is actually pretty important. So the TL is for Timelapse, 14 is for the sequence that I've been using for some other projects going on. And then making sure here that you can see there's 1, 2, 3, 4 digits starting with 0001. This is important because whenever you bring them into Premiere Pro, you need to make sure that the entire name of each image has the same amount of digits. And then it also needs to be a sequence so it can read the order of the images to put it in. So I also do JPEG, of course, sRGB. Leave the quality at 80 because it's still good enough and it helps bring down the file size just a little bit. I like to export it always in 4K just because it looks better, obviously, but also depending on what I'm going to use it for in the future, I always want it to be at that resolution. And then I just leave it at 300 pixels per inch. I do the sharpen for screen, just standard. So hit export. So for me, obviously, I'm going to come in, put it in my folder. Excuse my depth of many folders. So TL14. And then I have an edits folder to keep them separate from all the raws. And now I'll hit select. Now obviously with 1200 images, this is gonna take quite a bit of time. Right there you can see it saying preparing to export. But for the case of this video, I'm gonna go ahead and let it do its thing. Obviously depending on your machine and computer, it can take different amount of time. But whenever this is done, I'll jump back in and go into Premiere and then show you how I actually finish this out. All right, all the photos have exported, and if you come over to my File Explorer here, you can see all the images, all 1200 of them, listed out in nice sequential order. No spaces, no dashes, and like I said, once again, this is gonna be important here in a second. So all of those there, so I can come over to Premiere Pro, go to import, and then now you can see here's all the images again, and if I click on the first one, it now allows me to click this image sequence setting down here at the bottom. This is, it's reading all of these sequential numbers and it knows. So you go ahead and open it. Now it defaults to 29.97 frames per second or 30 frames per second, but I like to play it back at 60 frames per second. That's just my personal preference. So I just leave it at 60. And then I bring down the clip into the timeline and let it create its own sequence based on the settings that it reads off of that clip. Then I'll come up to File, Export, Media. I will save it in the folder, clicking on that hyperlink. Now I pretty much leave everything. I do like to click render at maximum depth, and found someone online saying that it's a good idea for 4K footage to do the target bitrate at 95 and the maximum bit rate at 110. I have no idea if that's the right thing. If anybody out there has a better way of doing it or a better explanation, I am definitely all ears, but that's how I've been doing it for a while now, and I've been getting good results. So you will get a pretty large file size. This one's saying 238 megabytes, but you end up with a really good quality video. So then I export it, and that's that. So there you have it. By no means is it the best way or the right way to do a time lapse, but it is my way. So hopefully you got something out of it. Hopefully you at least enjoyed coming along with me this morning on my little adventure. And so if you like this video, consider liking it. If you like what I'm doing here, consider subscribing and turning on those notifications. And until the next one, see ya.